Welcome everybody to the Equity Conference. We are recording this session so that we can view it later if you like. We hope you've been enjoying the conference so far. It's been pretty amazing. Captions are available, live captions are available if you want to take advantage of those. So please do. If you have any questions, please do feel free to put them in the chat, and I will be happy to help you with that, or Sasha may answer them depending on how she does her presentation. But I want to welcome you. We're going to be talking about crafting inclusive courses with a side of accessibility magic. Sasha, if you'd like to get started, welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Saša Stojić-Ito, and I am going to launch my presentation, so we shall get started. If you can just give me thumbs up so that I know you're able to see the screen well.
Yes.
Yes, wonderful. Okay, excellent. So today's title is Crafting Inclusive Courses with a Side of Accessibility Magic. I work in a role of online multimedia specialist, instructional designers, and I am an avid accessibility advocate. I fell, pun intended, into accessibility about 20 years ago as an injured student athlete at the local community college, and started working with the disability student programs and services, and that was it. From then on, I found a way to intertwine accessibility and making part of my job, no matter my title. So today I'm going to share some bits and pieces about how to make your courses more inclusive and how to create a successful and effective learning environment. So our outcomes for today are to recognize the importance of accessibility. We need to understand why is accessibility crucial and how to recognize its impact on inclusivity, specifically when it comes to student success, but also as a matter of legal compliance. And then how to implement accessibility in course design in terms of gaining practical skills and functionally apply those in Canvas LMS, since we're using that as our learning management platform. So before I dive in the next slide, I would like you to answer this question in the chat, or if you feel keen on unmuting yourself. But if I was to ask you, what is accessibility to you? Or what is the word that you associate with accessibility? What would that be? On the screen, you see full-on U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights, Civil Rights definition. But I want to find out, what is your interpretation and what do you think of associates you with accessibility? So I'm going to move the chat to the side so that I'm able to see what you're replying. And I'm going to read quite a few of those. So accessibility is love and hospitality. Wonderful. Different modalities. Accessibility means that everyone can access the information in a manner suitable and preferable to them. Wonderful answers. Making material and activities available and welcoming to all students. Kindness. These are some great answers. And that is all true. Providing what students need without them having to ask for it. Excellent. Absolutely excellent answers. So thank you for that. Definition from the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights is here. And in short, it says that any information that we post online for our students, it has to be, we have to ensure that it's as equally accessible and effective in the manner that we want to present for students, that they should not have any obstacles in terms of accessing that information. But in short, I'm going to give you a couple different definitions. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this numeronym A11Y or A11Y, but accessibility often in digital world is shortened with this numeronym. So you can pronounce it A11Y, A11Y, or ally. So throughout the presentation, if you see this numeronym, that is what I'm referring to. So accessibility is practice of making information activities in any environments sensible, meaningful, and usable for as many students as possible. It is a concept that, whether we're designing a product or a service, will be used by everyone and for everyone however they encounter it. And then it's also a practice of equitable, inclusive, and responsible design. And the next question is why accessibility matters. And I think through some of those answers in the chat, you already stated those answers. providing resources for students without them having to ask for it, making activities and information welcoming and available, and at the same time, making that information suitable for all users. So you are right on the point of what I have on the next slide. So accessibility matters first because it's a human right. It is more than just compliance. I often hear from faculty, well, my accessibility checker said I had 0 errors. I'm going to mention a thing or two about accessibility checker when we come to that point, but we want accessibility to be more than that checklist, more than compliance. It's about us creating solutions that are going to work for all. And this is irrespective of whether students have disabilities or do not have disabilities. We do not want to make students come forward and disclose information that they may not have to. So we want to have that proactive attitude, designing with accessibility in mind versus retroactively editing content when we know that somebody needs large print or somebody needs alt tags and images because they're reading your content via screen reader. So we also want to ensure that accessibility matters because a layer of accessibility in your course content will add to interactivity. If your content is just a big pile of text, a paragraph, students are going to scan through it and they will access about the 25%. But if students feel welcome, included, they feel like they belong, they know they can recognize that you put thought and intention into your content, making it accessible, they're going to interact with that content more. And they're going to be participating in the lessons, and that's going to motivate them to be part of your course. We also want to stay away from one size fits all. One size fits all is the past, and we need to ensure that we account for learners' diversity. Maybe some students learn better by reading your material. Maybe some launch immersive reader. What about those who are only accessing it via keyboard? What about screen readers or any other assistive technology? So we cannot design content in a fashion that, well, it's all in text and that is it. And this also applies in terms of a flexibility from what UDL is preaching, allowing students to submit assignments in the best medium that they know and work with. So that doesn't mean that you can just require textual responses. Maybe students will better reply with an audio or video or designing your slide in PowerPoint. So allow them that freedom of expression so that they are able to be a part of your course. And this ties into that principles of representation, action, and expression from universal design of learning. So when we look at the next slide, this is a picture that has 4 quadrants, and they're divided based on the type of disability. So touch, hear, see, and speak, and also into 3 different categories of permanent, temporary, and situational. So what this image is trying to convey is that disability is often non-visible, that disability can be short-term, long-term, disability can also be situational, and that there are many different instances where we can inquire these non-visual disabilities. An example, you may have a brand new mom who is in one arm holding the baby, but only has one hand available to, let's say, type on the computer and respond to your exam that it's strictly timed 10 minutes and that is it. Maybe you have an injured student athlete who got tackled on a football field this past weekend and has their, let's say, arm in a cast. Or maybe they have incur some type of traumatic injury from that impact. Maybe you have students who are attending courses on laptop, but the only way they can have a peace and quiet is in their backyard, and they have that glare from the sunshine. So are the colors that you're using in your course design accessible? Do they provide enough color contrast for somebody who is outside to see them, and so on? So I hope that through this image, you're able to see that disability is not all or nothing, that not all disabilities are visible, and that we can certainly have a wide range from permanent, temporary, and situational impairments. So question often that faculty asks is, what needs to be accessible? Anything that you create as an instructor. So you have that responsibility, ownership, autonomy to create your content in a fashion that anything you put in there in terms of files, whether it's Word, PDF, PowerPoints, Google Slide, any type of audio, video material, all of that needs to be accessible. So that is on us. Publishers' textbooks, this is kind of easier said than done, but one of the things that I have found out that if you write them multiple times, not necessarily threatening, but saying that you are going to perhaps go with a different publisher because their content is not accessible, they may meet you halfway. I have done this in one of my courses. I kept writing and saying that I'm going to get rid of the book because content is not accessible. And they said, well, we're working on a new edition, and what we can offer is accessible PowerPoints. And I said, I'll take it. So I got PowerPoints at least. So I feel like we have an avenue that we can explore in terms of asking and actually demanding from publishers to make the textbooks available for all students. And lastly, if you are using any third-party materials, you want to make sure that the basic accessibility is there. That doesn't mean that it's your responsibility to remediate content that it's out there in the World Wide Web, but at least to know that the portion that you are asking students to go and visit is accessible. Another way you can do that, you can copy paste that material in your Canvas page and then link it at the bottom. You can say content excerpt from, and then list it. But that way you have a chance to recreate that content in accessible fashion directly in your Canvas pages. Couple things you want to ask before you start your course design is how to make your content functional, usable, and accessible. Accessibility doesn't always equate usability. Content can be accessible, but would students be able to use that in the best possible way? And is the application of your design most functional? So you may be able to use, let's say, these 5 colors that you see on the screen, red, orange, yellow, green, and blue. And maybe those are the colors you are using to design your page because you want to attract some attention and you think color will do that. And then every single paragraph is highlighted in a variety of these colors. So content may be accessible because you use the proper heading and you use proper paragraph tags, and maybe you added something else. But would this be the best way for students to use content in terms of seeing plethora of colors? Or would that be distracting and maybe not so functional for everyone? So those are the questions you want to ask before you actually start designing your content, which leads me to the next slide about accessibility guidelines. So web accessibility guidelines are based on WCAG, WCAG, or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0. Right now, we're actually at 2.2. The new guidelines have been updated and published about a month ago. These guidelines are applicable whether you are teaching in LMSs or if you are designing content that is going to go on the World Wide Web. These guidelines talk about 4 principles. The acronym is POUR, P-O-U-R. P stands for perceivable, O for operable, R for robust, and U for understanding. So what that means that when you are presenting your content, in this case, Canvas LMS, you want to ensure that that POUR applies. Perceivable means that your content can be perceived by a variety of mediums, whether you are a visual user, colorblind user, assistive technology user, legally blind, deaf or hard of hearing. Can your content be perceived in any of those ways? Operable mean, do you require students to only use a mouse? And one of the examples is drag and drop. So if you use drag and drop activities in Canvas, do you have alternate way for students who are not able to use mouse to actually interact with that assignment via keyboard? So those are the things that you need to consider when it comes to operable. Are all the elements that are in there able to be accessed through different way? R stands for robust. So in this term, in terms of robust, is that Canvas, can Canvas be accessed through variety of different browsers? So how does your content appear on Safari? versus Chrome versus Firefox? Are you advising your student that Canvas works most optimally in Chrome and that it may not be able to render all of the images in Safari? Canvas is pretty good about making updates on the back end, so we don't have to worry about how Canvas as a tool functions or as a platform functions. But we want to ensure that we are telling students, well, if you're submitting your assignments in Canvas app, that's going to look this way and not the way you can view that on the web. Or one of the examples is also grading. How can students access grades or rubrics on Canvas app versus web? So that is the information that will fall under robust, and U is understandable. Are you using language that it's clean, clear, welcoming, engaging at the level that you're teaching? Is the terminology appropriate? I know that for some subject it's really hard to scale this maybe down a level, but doing the best as you can in terms of students being to understand what you're trying to teach them. And this is also where that streamlined flow of content would go. Do students know how to get from point A to point B? Do they know where to seek help and so on? So that's what falls under accessibility guidelines. And now in the next few slides, I'm going to identify 7 basic guidelines for web accessibility that are applicable in Canvas, and I'm going to give you some examples. And Lori, I see that the chat is blinking, so if there are any questions and if you want to stop me at any point, please do. I'm just going to quickly check if there's anything that I didn't answer. Okay, some links were shared. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And at the end of the session, I will, or Lori will share a couple of the links from this presentation. Okay, so on the next slide, we have headings. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of them and give you a couple different examples. So headings are there to provide structure and format content. They serve visual users because then they can hierarchically see that content is nested from the largest heading to the smallest. But they also serve a purpose for assistive technology that can extract heading hierarchy tree and able to access the portion of the content that they want to. They will be able to read those almost as a title or the menu of headings and then jump to the one that they want to. If content is not done via headings and you're using paragraphs in appearance of headings, then users who are accessing content via assistive technologies will have to read the entire portion until they get to exact section that they need to. So headings will allow users to have that shortcut, and it will allow AT, stands for assistive technology, AT users to scan the content the exact way sighted users do. Headings are 1 through 6, but in Canvas we have 1 through 4. 1 is always your title of the page, and then the first one in that rich content editor text box is heading 2, and then you have to hierarchically nest it. So that's how headings would work. On the next slide, we have lists. So lists serve purpose of itemizing elements or grouping the elements. If your tool has, or if your platform like Canvas has a tool that will allow you to create lists, use it. Use it, because that's going to make your life so much easier. How to estimate whether the list is ordered or unordered is this. If the sequence matters and there are proper steps in which one needs to access that portion of the material, then that is an ordered list. An ordered list is a numbered or alphabetical. If you just want items grouped together, but there's no really a sequence that matters, then you can use unordered list, which is generally a bullet list. And in Canvas, you have a couple different editions of those bullets that you can opt. So lists will provide that structure of group elements. And while seemingly to visual users, if you manually type a list, would appear that that is a list, that is not how that's going to transfer to AT users. They're going to hear 1 period, 2 period, 3 period, and so on. They may or may not connect that that is supposed to be grouped portion of elements or section of your content, while visual users may conclude that. And our goal is that to provide the same level of information for visual, non-visual users, assistive technology, or non-assistive technology users. So in short, do not type fake lists. If your tool has an option to use the list, do it. Next one is links. So links serve a purpose to communicate destination. So links will tell us what is the next step where we're going upon clicking on that link. And we want to use descriptive links. And what descriptive links are, these are the links that are going to either in one word or a short phrase communicate what it's next. We want to avoid typing URLs. I am not sure if you ever had an experience to hear how screen reader reads links, but back in the day when we had Unsplash in Canvas and we import the image and we forget to put alt tag for that image, and that Unsplash link is like 10 rows long, that's what screen reader is going to read. And it's going to be HTTPS and then every possible symbol letter combination that it's there. By the time it reads it, no one's going to know where we're heading. So we want to avoid that. And at the same time, we want to avoid ambiguous phrases. Click here doesn't communicate where we're going. Start here, which I often see on many home pages. What is start here? Where are we going? Read more, learn more, or read article link, and then where the link is linked. So those ambiguous phrases really do not communicate information. Where is the destination? Where are we going? Specifically, when it comes to assistive technology users, we want to give them an opportunity to decide, do I want to click on this link now, or do I want to continue reading through my content? Because if they know where they're heading, they have that choice. If they don't, you're forcing them to click that link, most likely bounce out of Canvas, and then come back and continue. So this is why setting links via descriptive phrases is very important. Next in line, we have color contrast. And when it comes to color contrast, it is a simple rule of having sufficient color contrast. So this means that your text versus background provides enough contrast so that low vision or visually impaired or colorblind users are able to perceive your content. So you do not want to use harsh color combinations. You do not want to use colors that don't go together. You want to make sure that that is there. When it comes to color contrast in text, 4.5 versus 1 is a paragraph requirement. 3 versus 1 is headings. This is something that you do not have to remember or calculate. At the end of this session, I'm going to give you the link for the best ever color contrast analyzer. And actually, I'm just going to quickly launch it on my screen so that you can see how that looks like. So color contrast analyzer is a tool that can be downloaded to your desktop. And you would be able to select the text, just clicking on the little dropper, select your background, and it provides the results for you. So you do not have to brainstorm anything. It's going to tell you in the bottom right corner towards the WCAG 2.1 results. So it compares it to the guidelines, and it says, what is the contrast ratio? If you have green check marks below on these drop menus, you pass. If you have red X's, that doesn't pass. And I'm going to give you a quick example. Let's say we're going to do orange here, orange text on white, really hard in a paragraph. That's what this first one is saying, the regular text, but it can work in a large text. So you know now that combination white-orange can work for your large headings. So you do not have to worry about memorizing this. You simply use the checker. Non-textual elements need to have 3 versus 1. So for example, if this icon that you see on the left-hand side was a part of the content, something that conveys content, I want to make sure that this is visible. I can test it in the exact same fashion. I would pick up that color picker. This icon is kind of like a dark blue. I select the background, which is white. And now at the very bottom, non-text contrast will tell me if this image passes. And for images, we need to have 3 versus 1. So that is the way this particular checker works. And now it's not letting me close it. There we go. Okay. So when it comes to color, we do not want to use it as the only way to convey meaning. So if you have color red in your text and you say to your students, the most important portion of this unit is in red. What about students who are red blind, which is the most common blindness, red or green? 1 in 7 male students in your courses may be color impaired. So you want to use color plus style. So color plus bold, color plus identifier, color plus something else, so that students have another way to identify it, because color contrast generally impacts most visual and then color impaired users. Next in line, images and alt tags. So alt tag is written description of non-textual element. It's a very precise, concise, short description of what that image is. I often hear from faculty, well, I only have 120 characters in Canvas, I cannot describe my image. And my answer back generally is, well, if your image requires way more than 120 characters to be described, maybe that image should be described through the portion of the content before or after that image, or you should embed that information in your content. So then alt tag can be a short, precise 120 character descriptive phrase. There is a big difference between alt tag and image description. So alt tag can be something that it's associated with our content, what that image represents to you, to the unit that you're teaching, versus what that image is portraying when you want to describe it. There's no really one size fits all when it comes to alt tags, because if I gave all of us exact same image, I am 100% positive that all of us will describe it in a different fashion. So faculty sometimes says, well, this is the hardest thing because I don't know what to describe this. Can you help me with this phrase? Phrase is very subjective to what you're teaching. So you want to make sure that you communicate that essential communication and then interpret it based on the content. Alt tag is very important when it comes to assistive technologies, because in place of image, it will read that description to assistive technology users, but it also serves purpose for your visual users. Let's say your students are opening Canvas in Safari. Safari is notorious for not rendering images. So in place of that image, there will be alt text on the screen. So that's another helpful information when it comes to why making alt tags while writing alt tags. If your image doesn't convey any information, is purely there for decorative purposes, you set it up as decorative. If you describe or put alt tags for descriptive images, think about this. Visual users glance at it, move on. They most likely would be able to conclude that these images on the page are there just for decoration, just for being there. But if I am legally blind user using screen reader, I will have to hear every single alt tag, whether important or not, maneuvering through that content. So we are making content accessible, but we're not making it most usable. So this is the example in terms of accessibility versus usability. So that's something that we need to be cognizant of.
Sasha, there's 2 really good questions in the chat about images.
Okay. This is where AI can help instructors with accessibility, image description, and alt tags. Yes. I have tested ChatGPT on that. I've tested a Copilot, and I have to tell you, I love Copilot way better for that. You have it enabled if you're using Microsoft Office Outlook. And that is if your campus has allowed that use. So that's something that you need to check. But I've tested it kind of parallel, and I put an image and I ask to describe, and I like the Copilots. Maybe it's the subjective nature of the image. Maybe it's how I'm asking. There's all other variants here, but I found it that I get a better description. So AI can be a stepping stone. It can help you coin a phrase, but you will still need to adjust that for the content that you're teaching. Because what AI will do with an image, it would literally describe what's on the image. So for example, for this slide that I'm sharing, it's going to say image alt tags with 3 icons and 3 maybe bullet points on the screen. It will describe what's on the image. But if I was using this slide as a part of my content and embedding it in my Canvas page, my alt tag would be images, alt tags, guidelines on how to apply accessibility. So my interpretation of this will be way different than what AI will actually coin, but it's a great stepping point. And then last question here says, since images are complicated, should we avoid images? No, and here is why. We want to ensure that our content doesn't only come in textual medium, because what about students who have some type of cognitive impairments? In order for them to comprehend textual information, they often want to or like to associate it with a visual. So you want to have a good mix of medias embedded into your content plus text. And that can mean using an image, using a video, and so on. When it comes to complex images, and this is often complained from STEM folks, I don't know if I have any STEM folks on the call today, but STEM folks often say, well, our images are, I don't know, complex chemical equations or tables or I don't even know what. You can still use it, but make sure that you describe that image prior to students coming to that image. So you can describe that, I don't know what kind of graph in the text preceding, and then your alt tag can be very short reflection of what that is. So don't avoid it, because you allow flexibility to users to perceive the content in the manner they would like to use best. Some would be able to just simply look at the image of that graph and conclude what's going on. Some students may have to read and do it. Some may have to read and look at the image or look at your video. So we want to ensure that we have all of that. It's just a matter of finding ways how to describe complex images. I hope that answers these questions.
Yes.
And if not, please just post again and I will come back to this. Okay. Next one in line, tables. I think the tables are whole next level on alt tags, because alt tags and tables are most two common complaints, not complaints, but in a way hardships that faculty has because they don't know how to use alt tags appropriately, or then tables. First thing I want to tell you is do not use tables to present images on your homepage, such as your buttons or images that are shortcuts to your content. That's not what the tables are for. Tables serve a purpose of presenting some type of data that needs to be organized or that it's complex data, not for styling. There is a way to use them for styling, but you got to know a bit of HTML and how to do that, and also to understand how assistive technologies then will access the tables. So when it comes to tables, we do not want to manually style them. That is not ADA compliant. But what Canvas Checker does really well, when you embed your table, it's going to flag you the second you embedded it. And it's going to say, hey, you have a table, but you don't have a caption. So two components that you have to ensure are there when it comes to your tables are caption, which is a title of your table, and then whether your table has a heading column or heading row or both. What that means, that is the most top column and most left row. Did I say that correctly? No, I didn't say that correctly. Most left column, most top row, that will be used as a reference. So when the screen reader comes across the data in the cell, it's not just going to read what's in the cell. It's going to read that in relationship to what is that column, what is that row, and which row or column that is. So it may say 2 of 3, option A for the column, and then reads the row. So users who are solely using screen readers, they understand where they at. If you don't have caption and you do not have heading row and or column, then the data will just simply be read. And if you have, let's say, a table with student information and their IDs and their major, it's just going to read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, biology, 7, 8, 9, 10, math, but it's not going to really correlate that information. So tables, I feel, are quite simple to use. So put caption, put heading row and or column, and you're done. Canvas has really good tools already embedded in the rich content editor. So you would be able to input the table, address it for accessibility, and then you can style it. So you don't want to manually style appearance of the heading row or appearance of the column or anything else. Just simply on your RCE toolbar, use the table tab and then pick your options, because that way you will ensure that all of that is properly embedded through the rich content editor on the HTML side. HTML talks to the browser, browser talks to the screen reader. So we ensure that communication in terms of how the table needs to look like is there for all of our users. Last one of the 7 guidelines are closed captioning. And closed captioning are used to provide a dialogue or the narrative of what's happening on the screen. We have 3 different types of captions. Auto captions, which generally you see on YouTube videos. Those captions are not edited for grammar and punctuation, and they often do not follow the spoken word or the action on the screen. So these captions will not be accessible. We also have open captions, which is now present a lot in social media. So if you are a TikToker or you're using Instagram or anything else, these captions are actually burned into your video. So while they actually appear on the screen, they are not serving legally blind students because the screen reader cannot extract those captions at all. So closed captions, in order to be considered ADA compliant, are captions that are edited for grammar and punctuation. They are 99% accurate, which means that you can make one error every 2 to 3 sentences. When it comes to legally blind users or legally blind and deaf users, we want to ensure that we also have transcripts, because then transcripts can be sent through refreshable braille, so they will be able to access the content. And then also you can request through DECT grant to get audio descriptions of your videos to serve the population that requires audio description of the videos. But when it comes to, let's say, recording the video or presenting or teaching, let's say, equations on the whiteboard, you also have to think of the language you're using, how you're using it, how are you describing what's happening on that board, so that those closed captioning very closely relate that information to users who are non-visual. I've seen a couple examples, and nothing against math teachers. I actually work with math teachers a lot, but let's say you're presenting the equation and writing it on the whiteboard and you're recording yourself. And you are using black marker for portion of the equation, then you're using green, then you're using, let's say, purple. And while you're writing, you're not announcing that you're changing those markers, and all of a sudden you just saying the solution is in purple. In purple what? Those students who are solely navigating this with screen reader and not able to see the screen, they don't know the difference of you using 3 different marker colors. They don't know what's in purple. They're not able to see that. So you have to be very explicit and understand that not everybody will perceive your content in that visual medium, so that you are communicating that information clearly for all of your students. Okay, transcripts and audio descriptions are generally AAA web accessibility guideline, and often requests for these would come through disability student programs and services, or however you call department that serves students with disabilities. And then you would be able to get the transcription or audio description. And actually CCCAC, the college's accessibility center, California Community Colleges Accessibility Center, does a really great job in terms of teaching about closed captioning, audio descriptions, and transcripts. And you would be able to get some great information from them on the sites where you would be able to embed your videos and get that audio description should you need them, and then post them in your courses. I am not sure of the exact name of that website, but I can find it if there are folks interested. Okay, so those are the 7 guidelines. And now I just want to reflect in the last slide here, what is the future of accessibility? So often we approach accessibility as a checklist or as a compliance or as, well, my Pope Tech checker gave me 0 errors, or my Canvas checker didn't flag anything. So accessibility is a journey and not a destination, especially in this era of AI or the boom of AI. Accessibility is also changing. Because technology is changing. There is technology that will perceive content in this fashion or that fashion. So we need to ensure that we keep up with accessibility, and we know these basic guidelines so that we know how that transfers functionally through the tech equipment that assistive technology users would use. It is a progress over perfection, which means that as long as you show intent that you are trying to present content in accessible fashion, that you are doing your best to do that, it's going to help students understand. So one of my suggestions here is put a disclaimer on your homepage, accessibility statement, and then convey that information to your students that you will ensure to the best of your abilities, content in your courses will be accessible. Should they not be able to access ABC or however you want to phrase that, they should contact you. Students feel so much better about participating in your course when they feel included. And one of the ways to convey that inclusion is to show that you are trying, and that while you can't make your course perfect and you may not be able to remedy absolutely everything this moment throughout your online course so that it's accessible to assistive technologies, you are trying. And the biggest thing of all is shifting from that reactive attitude. I mentioned it early on. Reactive attitude is we're only remedying or editing content when we know that students have disabilities. And I don't even know how many times I've heard from faculty, well, why do I need to make my content accessible? I don't have anybody with disabilities in my course. My answer back is always that you know of. There is a good percentage, up to 25 of our students who never seek DSPS services, never ask for accommodations because of the social stigma, taboo, or for whatever many other personal reasons. So we do not want to force students to come to the position where they say, well, I can't see the colors you are using on the screen, creating your Canvas pages. Could you please change that? Maybe that is a very big step for them to come forward. So we don't want that reactiveness. We do not want to fix things when needed. And trust me, about 5 years ago or so, I was fixing my course to go into CVC OEI through the POCR, and I have invested 367 hours to remedy already designed course to be accessible, or as accessible as it can be. But if that was done early on, then that process will be maybe a quarter of that if. So we want to bake in accessibility in our process, ensure that accessibility is part of our course design, not separate. Accessibility should be intertwined in our design process, and that's the only way that we can establish that proactive attitude. And then on this last slide, there are a couple resources, and Lori will share that in the chat. And if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute or post them in the chat. One thing that I want to grab for you that I didn't give to Lori earlier is that color contrast a link. So let me just grab that one. And I know you'll see my screen kind of funky now because I am sharing portion, but it's coming in the chat. So that is that color contrast analyzer that I launched on the screen that you would be able to download to your desktop. And because it's downloaded to your desktop, you can use it on anything. Word docs, Google Slides, documents, pretty much anything. And where if you have a Wave as a browser extension, you would be able to then use that for the digital medium. So I am going to stop my share and go to the chat so that I can see what questions you have. Okay, somebody, let me see if I went far enough. Okay, question that I answered previously, since images are complicated, should be avoided. So the answer was no, we should include images because they do help students correlate the information. Somebody was interested in that CCCAC. I can find that info, and Lori, I can email you. I am not sure. Somewhere on the cccaccessibility.org, there should be section with recordings and videos and webinars that they're hosting. So it may be in one of them. And the session was called closed captioning.
I put the Accessibility Center link in there, but I can dig really quick for the closed captioning specific one.
Okay.
There
Okay,
is a question.
Uh-huh.
There is a question, would you recommend AI for creating video captions?
Oh, that will depend. Well, okay. AI can help you convert auto captions into edited for grammar and punctuation captions, but we are already using AI for captions. Like right now in Zoom, for the live captionings, that is an AI that can create captions, and I think it's pretty good because it really does list the spoken word as closely as it can. AI cannot account for all of the accents. I still have a slight accent, and I can tell that sometimes depend on the complexity of the words, it's not interpreting it right. But in terms of, let's say, recording a Zoom video and then plugging that into Canvas Studio, algorithm for closed captioning is pretty good. And I found it that even with folks who have accent, it does actually transcribe really well. Accuracy is about 85%. And when I compare that to YouTube, for example, Canvas Studio does much better job. If the videos are not yours and they have auto-generated captions, such as many of them on YouTube, you would be able to then download the transcript, plug that transcript bit by bit into ChatGPT or any AI, give it a format and say, you know, edit this transcript for grammar and punctuation, and then here is the link of the video, and assign proper timing. It's not always most successful, but it can help. And Kimberly, I don't know if that answers your question fully.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Resources that Lori posted that were on the last slide are a quick article. I wrote this maybe about a year ago, and it's like a quick refresher on what these 7 pillars of accessibility are, 7 guidelines. So you can quickly brush through it as a reminder while you're creating content. The second one was Web Accessibility Guidelines, so WCAG 2.0, and that is a quick reference in terms of understanding what that really means. And then the third link was a Canvas course evaluation checklist. And this is a new updated expanded list that also includes the portion on the curriculum. But while you're designing your courses, all of these checklists can be helpful guides along the way while you're creating your content, so that you are, as I mentioned earlier, baking that accessibility in versus creating the content and then coming back to it to edit or remediate. Any other questions? And Lori, I see that you found the link. Very good.
Oh my gosh, there's so many great resources there.
Yes. They definitely have so many things there. Anything else?
mean, I feel like I want to amplify your last point about starting with accessibility in mind from the beginning rather than trying to do the remediation as a person who's now done both. It's so much easier, to learn these things ahead of time and then incorporate them into your class. So much easier.
Definitely. There was a saying, and I may be completely butcher it now, but there was a saying, and I also may mix up the values because I'm from Europe and we use metrics, but there was something along the lines of a kilo or a pound of remediation is worth an ounce of baking it in right away. Something along the line. Maybe I completely butchered it, but I think you get what I'm insinuating here.
Yeah, big time. Okay, or if there aren't any more questions for Sasha, then I'm gonna put in the chat our conference playlist so you can come back and review this video once it gets posted. I know that I always do that with this conference because I love it so much and I always get so much information, but it's so much information at once. And I know especially what Sasha was talking about, the tables. I'm going to come back and be like, wait, what did she say? Because I use tables a lot. I've also put in the chat the conference program at a glance. And then if you're on social media, I've also put that in the chat. I will stop recording.